So now we come to the hard part, actually soldering the tube in. The real hard part is actually getting all of the wires from the tube into the circuit board. I would say that this is the most difficult part of this entire process. You can see I've got the circuit board clamped in the vise horizontally now, and I've got the vise up vertically, so I've got more room to work. And I'm looking at what I consider to be the top of the board, the same side that the processor is soldered to. You can see if I can move the camera here. You can see on top of the board, at least I hope you can see, that there's markings around the tube. It says display NC for no connect, and then up with an arrow. And what those are for is display shows which way the display itself should be facing towards the front of the board. Up obviously shows how to position the tube up, and then the marking that says NC is for no connect, and there's a little box drawn around 3 pins. This is the way that we orient the pins on the tube. The tube has 3 pins that are 3 wires that are not connected to anything, and if you pick up the tube and look in the front, right where the wires connect, if you look closely at the wires where they come through the glass, there's 3 that are just clearly not connected to anything. So those are how we align everything in the tube. The best way that I found to do this is to take all of the wires on the tube and kind of bend them out from the center of the tube a little bit. I'll show that. I'm doing that now. I'll show that here in a second. So I've kind of bent the wires out. I'm just pulling each wire out just a little tiny bit. And this is so that we can kind of push the tube down onto the board a bit. And then the next step is to use a pair of tweezers and just start feeding the wires through the holes. You have to bend them to do this, and maybe somebody can come up with a better way than I have to do this, but this is what I've come up with so far. So the thing to do is to make sure your tube is aligned properly, up is up and front is front. Find the first of your 3 no connects. So I've bent that one out a little bit so I can see it better. And then just going to hold the tube on the board here. Let the wires feather out a little bit. And then I'm going to take that one that we just found, bend it with the tweezers, and put it through the first hole there. So once you've done that, your tube should be a little bit stable, but not too much. And then it's just more of the same. You're just going around the circle, bending the wires and pushing them through. You want to watch out for crimps in the wires. Those can be really tricky to remove. So you don't want to bend any of the wires too much, and don't twist the whole thing too much. So I'll work through some of them here. Now I've got the first 3 in. Those are the 3 no connects. And I'm going to do the wires that are towards me. You want to keep steady pressure on the top of the tube so that the wires don't jump back out. These wires are pretty flexible. They're thin. I haven't had one break yet, so feel free to bend them to get them into the holes. And you don't have to worry too much about how the tube is positioned at this point. Once we're done here, we can actually move it around quite a bit as we pull the wires through and get everything centered at that point. And we'll have a whole section on how we managed to get this thing nice and centered on the board, so you can avoid the mistakes I made in my first few. And we're about halfway done now. It's usually a little easier than this because I tend to move the vise around a lot and have a better view of what I'm doing, but I'm trying to keep this in the frame, so I think you'll actually have better luck than I am with this process. Hopefully I don't block the view too much here. I have to go around to the back now. Sometimes if you just can't get a wire to go in, just lift it up and bend it out the other way, and that helps a lot. So now it looks like we've got them all in. Use your tweezers just a bit to straighten things out. I've got one here that's bent pretty bad, and we don't want that to kink as I feed the rest through. And this part is just pretty manual. You want to just use your fingers to bend the wires closer back to their original shape and line them up better with the holes. And you may find some new kinks there, which I have one along the back here. So everything's lined up pretty well at this point, and you should be able to start kind of massaging the wires in. As you do this, you don't want to move more than 1/10 of an inch or so at a time without checking the wires. It's really easy for one to get bent and start to kink, and they're very difficult to pull through once that happens. At this point, what I normally do is take the board out of the vise and just try to massage the wires in. I use a pair of pliers on the back of the board. If a wire is difficult to get through, just grab it with a pair of pliers and give it a pull. They're pretty resilient. I haven't broken one yet, and you can pull on them pretty hard to pull them through. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll try to keep it in view of the camera while I do that. So we can see the wires sticking through the bottom of the board, and I've got a couple that are bent already pretty bad here on the bottom. Straighten that out. And then just keep kind of squeezing the wires in with your fingers and rocking the board, and the wires should start to move through. It doesn't take a lot of force. keep constantly checking on the bottom. I don't know if you can see or not, there's one wire that bent pretty bad, and that's just about to form a kink, so pliers come in pretty handy for that. So figure out which one it is and just give that a little pull, and that pops that right through. And the way this usually goes is you run into a couple of those as you go. Here's another one that just happened. Straighten it out, and as you straighten them, it gets easier and easier to push the board down the wires. Unfortunately, I just realized that I have two of the wires crossed. I don't know if it can be seen in the video or not, but these two wires are actually crossed, so I basically have to almost start over. I need to pull the board out, hopefully not lose all the wires, and I'm going to need to pull those two out of their holes and bend them back in. Okay, those two are straightened out now. Let's feed the board back down. So now the board is almost to the glass of the tube, and we want to get it as close as we can without putting too much pressure on the wires and on the tube itself. And at this point, if anything is out of whack, you can kind of turn things and bend things a little bit. So I'm going to take this time to do an inspection on all my wires, make sure everything's threaded through, make sure my 3 no connects are where they're supposed to be, and make sure I don't have any more crossed wires or kinks or anything like that.